Attention to Des Moines. Iowa currently ranks second in the nation for new cancer cases. Cancer survivors say research saved their lives. Now they want to make sure it can save others. Advocates took that message to Representative Zach Nunn today, pushing for more funding and better access to treatment. We're going to send things out to KTIV Iowa State Capitol Bureau reporter Isabella Warren. She shares more of their story.
Every cancer diagnosis has uncertainty. And for some patients, that uncertainty goes past their health and into how they'll afford their life-saving care.
But I would not be here had it not been for research and the fact that we know more about radon.
Cancer survivors and advocates met with Congressman Zach Nunn to urge continued federal funding for cancer research. For many, the research has helped with advancements in treatment, but they say more investment is needed. For Clara Sirks, surviving cancer also meant navigating unexpected financial hurdles.
I was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer with metastases to my breast, my liver, my lymph nodes, my bones, my pelvis/ovary, and my brain.
Sirks says losing Medicaid coverage in the middle of treatment left her responsible for costs she wasn't expecting, piling financial pressure onto an already overwhelming diagnosis.
They said I made too much on disability, so I had to purchase a healthcare plan on Iowa Marketplace that didn't kick in until February 1st. Okay. So for the month of January, I was uninsured.
Starting this year, Iowa received $209 million for its rural transformation project to help fund early cancer detection and treatment in rural parts of the state. Congressman Zach Nunn says if reelected in November, he will pass legislation that will fund coverage gaps without federal government overreach.
It also means that we don't just have a one-size-fits-all government solution, and what I mean by that is a government takeover of healthcare. That is not a way that would have helped Clara at the end of this when she got onto an insurance program that was able to work for her.
Nunn's opponent, Sarah Trone Garriott, told cancer survivors and advocates earlier this week that she would support cancer research funding and reverse the funding cuts made by the Department of Government Efficiency. In Des Moines, I'm Isabella Warren.